And when you have the charging possibility at home or at work, it might make sense also to go for the plug-in hybrid if you can really commute purely electric. You know, some compromise you still have then.
So setting off here in the 2023 Integra. So the first thing you notice about this, well, you have a really nice low seat. Wranglers, like I said, you are sitting up higher thanks to that 2-inch lift here on the Rubicon 392. So you have a higher seating position. Of course, you have excellent visibility here in these Wranglers, like always. So you know, it's a very airy, open, high experience. It gives you a very fun and unique driving experience as well. But otherwise, the second you get on that gas, you start hearing that Hemi 392 V8 engine, and it is really the dominating factor of this whole experience. Because generally, you know, I mean, like in other Wranglers, you heard the engine for sure. It's not like they were quiet engines. But, you know, it was always just kind of in the background, and it wasn't really the focal point of the Wrangler. Now, the V8 is the focal point, and it is a delightful thing to listen to. I really love how there's way less sound deadening in the Wrangler than there is in any other Mopar product that uses this engine. And so, I mean, you hear everything. You hear all the mechanical workings of the engine a little bit more in the Wrangler. You hear just way more exhaust, too. And it is a little more drony. So, you know, it's not too bad, especially whenever it's warmed up and stuff, but you know, on low throttle, you sometimes do hear it at different frequencies and stuff. And thankfully, like I said, you can switch it on and off, and so you can turn it off, and then the drone goes away completely, which is great. But then it gets a little too quiet. I mean, it is the quiet mode, so I don't blame them for making it as quiet as they did. But it's just, I wish there was more modes to pick from. You know, maybe one that, you know, didn't have drone would be nice, but this is what it sounds like whenever you have the exhaust off. And then it just sounds like a slightly more burly version of the V6 or something. It's very subdued and stuff. But we'll leave the exhaust on because that's where all the fun is to be had in this thing. But yeah, so it does drone. Mopar exhausts on most of their SRT parts and stuff usually do have a fair amount of drone. Customers don't really seem to mind, and so, you know, that's why they continue on with the drone and stuff. I personally don't love it, you know, because you don't need to have drone. That is one thing. You know, there's lots of other amazing sounding exhausts that just don't drone. I wish that this didn't have the drone, but that's my only nitpick here with the Wrangler 392, which again, you can turn off the push of a button, so, you know, not something to dwell on. Other things though, you know, the Wrangler experience is still well intact here. You know, the V8 engine, although it's transformed the acceleration and for road handling and many other things, you know, the driving experience on road here is still fairly similar as far as everything else goes. Like, you still have pretty loose and imprecise steering. I think it is a little bit sharper here, maybe in the 392, than it is in other versions of the Wrangler, but, you know, still is.
Now the one that I'm driving also has the one-touch power soft top, so it's got essentially a hard top on the outside, but the roof panel is a fabric material, and it allows me to basically put the entire roof back. I was hoping that this model would give me a little bit more sound insulation from the outside world, but as you can hear as we get up to highway speeds, it's still pretty noisy out in the cabin. Wranglers are not known for offering, obviously, a quiet interior. But I'm still in electric mode right now, and you can see the gas engine has not come on. Still just driving on pure electric mode. When I started this trip, by the way, I want to mention the range was showing 26 miles. 26 miles is pretty good. That's around 5 miles more than what the EPA says this thing can go. Remember, Jeep said originally this would have 25 miles of range, but the actual number is 21. I imagine the Rubicon model has less range because of its, you know, bigger, knobbier 33-inch tall tires. This is a 5,000-pound brick, and there's only so much range you can pull out of a brick because it is just not aerodynamic. Jeep didn't do anything to actually make the 4xe model a little bit more aerodynamic, but you can see out on the highway at highway speeds, it's still pretty loud in here, but the Wrangler is a much more comfortable vehicle in general. The seats are pretty comfortable. The Sahara trim, or this high altitude version, has a really nice plusher leather material. It feels good. The regen brakes also are really nice. I barely have to touch the brake when traffic comes to a stop. And it automatically brakes for me, and it's also putting energy back into the battery pack, which is a great thing. That's the one beauty about these one pedal drive features, is you can save your brake pads. You don't have to use your friction brakes as much.
And see how it does. And here we go. Wow! Listen to that! Wow, that sounds fantastic! Holy crap! That sounds, oh man, they need to get this sound in the Challenger and the Charger. This is amazing! I was not expecting it to sound that good! Wow, okay. Man, this is fantastic. So, the regular 392 here runs, like I said, 6.4 liter heavy V8 engine. It has 470 horsepower, 470 pound-feet of torque as well. Jeep claims a 4.5 second 0 to 60 time, which I would say is accurate. You know, it does definitely shove you into the back of your seat, but it's not, it's not going to be as fast feeling as a 392 Challenger or Charger or something like that, because again, you're on these massive tires, you're in a super heavy thing, doesn't have great aerodynamics, all those types of things. Again, not a sports vehicle, not, acceleration is not the focal point here in the Wranglers ever, but it's nice that it's pretty quick, and and it's hooked up to the ZF 8-speed automatic transmission. It's the 8HP 75 version of this transmission. But we'll go ahead and try out some manual shifts here, just because we do have power shifters now, so I feel like I should test it out here. So first, listen, crackles and pops. Man, I love how much you hear this thing. Man, this could arguably be one of the most fun vehicles with this engine. And I love the Challenger and the Charger. I'm not an off-road person, but man, I mean, it's like that exhaust is right over your shoulder there. It's like, it's hilarious. But anyway, the manual shifts and stuff are pretty quick. Oh man, it's not quite as fast as you get in some other SRT products I've noticed, but it's pretty responsive, pretty fun to play with if you want to. We're coming up some corners here. I am not going to fly around corners with this thing because, again, we have a 2-inch lift. We have this big heavy engine sitting up, fairly high in this thing. And again, we are in a Wrangler with mud tires, so I would be foolish to be pushing this thing at all, especially, this much power. You can get yourself into trouble flinging this thing into a corner with how high up it is. But, I mean, going around corners here, it is handling itself surprisingly well. It certainly is better than the average run-of-the-mill Wrangler. Now, I do like how they added it to the unlimited version, so you have a little bit more stability with a longer wheelbase than what you get with the two-door version. Those can be a little bit interesting still if you go into a corner a little bit too quickly. The 4-door versions here, it's a little bit more stable. I prefer the driving experience of the Unlimiteds. I've talked about that in the past in my 2.0T Wrangler Unlimited review, and even the Eco Diesel one that I drove. But this, it does handle itself fairly well. Again, like I said, the steering is pretty imprecise and stuff. No one really cares how this thing handles on road, but since most people that buy these are going to actually be driving these on road, I feel like it's worth mentioning how it handles and drives. Now, you also do have upgraded brakes from the Mojave and the 4xe version, so larger brakes to haul this vehicle down to a stop, because you do have about 650 pounds of extra weight here. The estimate here is about 5,100 pounds for the curb weight for one of these Wranglers versus about 4,450 for a Wrangler Rubicon Unlimited with the normal V6. So a lot of extra weight. Now, they did a lot more than just drop this engine in to make this version. So the engine, by the way, it doesn't just drop right in. They had to do a bunch of modifications. They had to move the alternator. They had to do special exhaust setup so that it all fits snugly in there. And there's several other changes they made. It was not an easy swap over to put this engine in. They made it work, and I appreciate, again, those Jeep engineers for being awesome and going to the trouble of doing that. But yeah, so in addition to that, though, it has upgraded frame rails. Of course, like I said, you have the higher lift. You have the Fox shocks. It has a Dana 44 axles front and back there, and 2-speed transfer case still. But it does have full-time 4-wheel drive. So unlike others where you can sometimes have 2-wheel drive Wranglers, this is 4-wheel drive all the time. There's a 4 auto, and then there's a 4 high part-time mode. But then that off-road plus mode allows you to go in and lock the differentials even at high speeds, which is a cool little thing that you can have there. And so it's nice that they've included that. You also do still have a 4-low mode to crawl. As far as that full-time 4-wheel drive system, so it defaults to about a 70% rear, 30 front bias, but it can go to full 50-50 too if you wanted to. And since this is a Rubicon, you also have the disconnecting sway bars, the front and rear locking diffs and all that. But yeah, I'm gonna do another acceleration because it's just too much fun in this thing. It's addicting. Here we go. That think one of the things that adds to the fun of the V8 Wrangler is that you still have, they definitely, they retuned the suspension geometry, the shocks, the dampers, all that kind of stuff are all different and changed, but it still has that softer ride of a Wrangler, so that, unlike some of the other stuff, the sportier SRT products where it's, very flat and controlled, this, whenever you floor it, the whole nose lifts up and it goes all dramatic on you, and it's hilarious that if you let off the gas and you're onto the brakes, it really shifts around you and moves around a lot. Way more involving, way more exciting, and a little more sketchy feeling than what you get with all the other SRT products, which again adds that excitement and that fun, even though it's not fast and sports car like, it's hilarious fun. And anyone who appreciates the Mercedes G-Wagon, especially the AMG version of those, this is kind of like that at half the price, and it's all the fun, if not even slightly, maybe even more fun than what you get with an AMG G-Wagon for $75,000 instead of $150 to $200 grand or whatever those things go for. And those are a lot of fun. I did already review an AMG G-Wagon. They are fantastic, but this is even more raw because it's a little bit smaller, a little bit less of a luxury experience like you get in the Mercedes. This is one of those vehicles you don't need to spend a lot of time with it to get a sense of what it's like and to get a sense of what this thing is about. It all it takes really is a few accelerations in this thing, and you have the full story here, and at least on road. Obviously the big piece of the puzzle here is off-road. They heavily improved the off-road handling. Like I said, it has the best approach and departure angles out of any Wrangler thanks to that additional lift. Of course, having the extra power as well is going to be fantastic to power you out of sand or mud or whatever you're in, and do it with a fantastic soundtrack, I might add. That's going to be where this thing really is going to feel like it's really coming alive. That's its element. Its element is not the streets here. Unfortunately, I just did not have time to go take it on off-road trails and stuff. I only was able to actually spend about 2 afternoons with this vehicle, unfortunately, due to circumstances outside of my control personally. So even though Jeep lent me this thing for an entire week, it was just sitting in my driveway begging for me to drive it. I could not drive it because I was not home. So I wish I had more time to have fun with this thing. But like I said, you get a good sense of what it's like just with a very first test drive. This is one of those cases, one of those vehicles where the engine makes up for any other shortcomings. Whenever you floor it and you hear that thing, all is forgiven. You don't care about anything else in the vehicle. It's just, you just put your foot down. Your day is instantly 10 times better, and that's the end of it. But also, since it's not the fastest thing out there, it's not about straight line speed. It's not about beating people at stoplights or drag racing. It's just about having fun. And the Wrangler's always been about having fun. Now you have fun with a fantastic soundtrack with even more speed and hilarity. And as we just passed another Wrangler, another fun thing if you were to daily drive one of these, is you get the Jeep Wave in that community, which is really an awesome thing that is pretty unique. I mean, there are some other car communities out there that are pretty tightly knit, but I think the Jeep community is, especially the Wrangler community in particular, is very, very, seems like a really fun community, and so it's awesome that you get that kind of built in as well whenever you buy one of these. Even if you don't ever plan to off-road one of these things, just having that raw experience and this adventure-ready type of vibe makes every mundane trip a little bit more fun, and a little bit more of an adventure and an event to go out in a Wrangler, and particularly in a V8 Wrangler, it's an even more fun event.
I was in Austin, Texas, but from the scenery, it looks like Jeep has transported us back to Jurassic Park because we're here in a drop-top Wrangler. We're on our way to this off-road course, and we're gonna see what the electrified 4xe can do out on these conditions. Now there's a little puddle of water over here. Jeep says that this car is capable of going through 30 inches of water. Obviously, this is more like 3 inches. But it's always fun to go through some water whenever you're off-roading. Another thing I forgot to mention earlier is when you're sitting inside the car, there is a nice little LED status bar here that shows how much charge is remaining in the vehicle when you have it plugged in. Each of the LED lights light up in sequence, and they get a little bit more full whenever the battery gets more charge in it. I think the coolest part about the 4xe when you're off-roading is the fact that the four-wheel drive system in this Wrangler is exactly the same as the gas-only version. You still have the Dana 44 sway bar disconnect features. I mean, I'm in 4 low right now, and it's in all-electric mode. I've got around 33% of the battery left, and you can just creep along here in completely all EV mode in 4-low. That is the first time that you're ever experiencing something like this. And if you guys have always wanted a drop-top convertible that's electric, there has been nothing on the market until now. This is the first one, really. All right, so as opposed to the puddle earlier, now we're going through an actual little, I guess, a stream right now, but this is where Jeep is going to allow us to test the 30 inches of water fording capability. And this is probably something that I know this is something I've never done, is drive in all electric mode through this stream. And this is pretty deep water. You can hear it on the outside. And the Rubicon model is the one that you're gonna want, because this is the one that gives you almost 11 inches of ground clearance. Wow, this is pretty deep. I'm pretty impressed. And the fact that it's quiet out here, I don't hear a thing other than just water splashing. This is pretty deep. So now I'm supposed to go up this. This is kind of terrifying. Okay.
Pretty cool.
Wow. And the instant torque from the electric motor, I just barely touch the throttle and this thing just surges forward. But the all-electric torque makes it so easy. I barely have to touch the throttle. This is so strange.
That is very interesting. Interesting surprise.
Yeah, it's so quiet out here too. I mean, this is the future of off-roading right here. Wow, that was terrifying. That was terrifying. Okay. Okay. And we're still in all electric right now.
How much did you regenerate?
Probably nothing, but that was terrifying. Like, my foot was not, I was like, I'm not letting go of this brake. Like, oh my God. I don't know if I trusted it to actually use the brake. I was like, it did, yeah.
T-Rex behind us, he's before us.
Woo! That is so cool. All right, this thing is way more fun off-roading than it is on the road. Wow.
Did you float it back? Or did you actually float?
That was only like literally just a little bit of throttle. That wasn't much. If you go past 50%, I noticed it'll turn the engine on. Sorry, Rob. Where's my shirt that says sorry, Rob? So I think the reason being is because your model has those bigger tires.
Yeah.
Those bigger tires are definitely cutting into...
I'm higher off the ground too, aren't I?
You have about an extra inch of ground clearance.
Yeah, so air, tires.
Would you like to try it again?
Ah! 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 Come on! Come on!
All right, now they seem about, I'll tell you one thing, going highway speeds in this thing is interesting. It's loud in here. It's very loud.
You think it's loud in there? I've got the soft top.
I don't think this is any quieter. It's really loud in here.
Is your retractable one a hard top or a soft top?
So the retractable part is a soft top.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's still pretty. Yeah, I got you.
It's still pretty noisy. So I was telling people, if you are expecting this to be quieter, you may want to go for the actual hardtop model and then add the hardtop headliner, which should make it a little quieter. But this soft top model is definitely a little bit louder. But as we saw, the Rubicon is slightly slower. I guess it kind of depends on whose reaction time is better, but extra inch of ground clearance, the bigger tires, it slows it down a little bit. I also think yours is heavier. Yours is heavier by a little bit because of the off-road.
Just by a little bit, other than the driver, of course.
Oh, stop.
I also, you know,
there is also the Ram TRX, which is also fantastic off-road. It even has a Hellcat-powered V8 engine and stuff, which is also fantastic, fun in its own way. I just spent a week with one of those. And out on the highway here in the Wrangler 392. Again, like I said, lots of road noise and wind noise. And also, you're very susceptible to wind gusts in this vehicle because of its flat sides and the aerodynamics of this thing. So you are going to be fighting the wind a little bit in these vehicles. And so, it's not a great highway driving experience. It's also not great on long trips because there's no dead pedal. So it's not great. Now, they did make it a little bit better in these because the Rubicon